Somewhere in the American West, the Earth forgot to follow the rules. Utah rises from the desert floor in formations so alien, so geometrically impossible, that astronauts once trained here to prepare for the surface of Mars. This is a land where ancient seabeds became vertical cliffs, where wind and water carved stone into arches, spires, and amphitheaters over 200 million years. The colors shift hourly across these landscapes, from pale morning gold to deep afternoon crimson, as if the rock itself were breathing. 5 national parks cluster within a single state. Yet beyond their boundaries stretch vast wilderness areas where few travelers venture. Slot canyons narrow to shoulder width beneath walls 1,000 feet tall. Salt flats extend to the horizon in perfect white silence. Hoodoos rise like sentinels from canyon floors. Their shapes so strange, they were given names borrowed from mythology and imagination. This is the story of a landscape that predates human memory by epochs. A place where geology becomes spectacle and solitude remains possible. From the mountains that catch winter snow to the desert basins that shimmer with summer heat, Utah contains more variety of terrain than entire continents. What follows is a journey through a state that looks like another planet, yet exists just beyond the edge of the familiar world. But Utah's otherworldly character begins not in the red rock south, but in the saline waters of the north. The Great Salt Lake spreads across the basin like a remnant of prehistory, a vast inland sea with no outlet to the ocean. This is the largest saltwater lake in the Western Hemisphere, stretching across more than 1,700 square miles when full. Its waters hold a salinity that rivals the Dead Sea, creating an environment where few creatures survive, yet millions of birds gather. The lake shifts constantly, its shorelines advancing and retreating with drought and snowmelt from distant mountains. Mineral-rich waters paint the surface in bands of blue, pink, and green, depending on the season and the algae blooming beneath. Brine shrimp pulse through the shallows by the billions, their tiny bodies sustaining one of the largest migratory bird populations on the continent. The air carries a mineral sharpness here, a reminder that this water has been concentrating salt for thousands of years. Rising from the southern waters, Antelope Island offers solid ground amid the liquid expanse. Free-roaming bison herds descended from 12 animals brought here in 1893 now number in the hundreds. Rocky ridgelines cross the island, providing views across the lake to distant mountain ranges dusted with snow. Beaches of pale sand meet water so buoyant that floating requires no effort. and the salt holding visitors at the surface like a gentle hand. This island exists as a world apart, where wildlife outnumbers people and silence settles over the landscape at dusk. Beyond the lake's shrinking shores, that ancient inland sea left behind something even more surreal. The Bonneville Salt Flats stretch across the northwestern corner of the state. A vast white plain that seems to belong on another world entirely. Here, the ancient Lake Bonneville left behind its final gift when it evaporated thousands of years ago. What remains is 30,000 acres of crystallized salt, flat as glass and white as fresh snow. Standing at the edge of this expanse, the horizon dissolves into sky. No trees break the line. No hills interrupt the perfect flatness. The salt crust extends in every direction until Earth and atmosphere merge into a single pale blur. On windless days, thin layers of water collect on the surface and create mirror reflections so precise that clouds appear to exist both above and below. Photographers travel from distant countries to capture this illusion where gravity seems suspended. Speed seekers discovered these flats in the early 1900s. The hard salt surface proved ideal for land speed record attempts, and the Bonneville name became synonymous with velocity itself. Racing events still draw competitors who push machines beyond 300 miles per hour across this natural racetrack. Yet beyond the measured courses, silence reclaims the salt. Visitors who venture out alone find themselves surrounded by absolute stillness, standing on terrain that existed beneath an inland sea when mammoths still roamed the continent. Hundreds of miles to the south, the landscape trades salt-white silence for rust-red drama. Monument Valley rises along the Utah-Arizona border, a landscape so iconic it has defined how the world imagines the American West. Here, sandstone towers climb from an endless red plain, their forms carved by wind and time into shapes that seem almost deliberate. This is sacred land to the Navajo people, who have called it home for generations. The West and East Mitten Buttes stand as the valley's most recognized sentinels. Their names come from their shapes, each formation resembling a hand with thumb extended against the sky. These twin monuments rise nearly 300 feet above the valley floor, and their rust-colored walls glowing amber at sunrise and deepening to burgundy as shadows lengthen. Photographers return season after season, yet no two visits capture the same light. Nearby, Merrick Butte holds its ground with quiet authority. Named after a prospector who met his fate in these lands during the 1870s, The formation carries both beauty and history in its weathered face. Its broad shoulders and flat summit create a striking contrast against the slender mittens beside it. Together, these three monuments form the classic vista that has appeared in countless films, from westerns of the Golden Age to modern road stories. Standing before them, visitors often fall silent. At the scale of geologic time pressing gently against human understanding. Just beyond the valley's sacred buttes, the Colorado River once ran wild through sandstone canyons before human ambition intervened. Lake Powell now stretches across this border country, filling ancient gorges with deep blue water. Nearly 2,000 miles of shoreline twist through red rock wilderness here. This is a landscape of contradictions, where desert and reservoir exist in unlikely partnership. Glen Canyon Dam rises 710 feet from the canyon floor, a concrete wall holding back 17 million acre-feet of water. Completed in 1966, the structure took nearly a decade to build and forever changed this corner of the Colorado Plateau. Below the dam, yes, the river runs cold and clear through the remaining stretches of Glen Canyon. Above it, the reservoir backs up for nearly 190 miles. Drowning canyons that few people ever photographed or mapped. Wahweap Bay opens as the main gateway to this vast inland sea. Houseboats dot the marina, while red cliffs rise directly from the waterline. The bay sits near the Arizona border, offering access to countless side canyons that branch off like fingers into the stone. Morning light turns the surrounding walls to copper and rust, while the water holds the sky in perfect reflection. Here, the scale becomes difficult to grasp, with formations that dwarf any vessel passing beneath them. Leave the reservoir's blue waters behind, and the wilderness grows wilder still. The Paria Canyon-Vermilion Cliffs region sprawls across the Arizona-Utah border in a maze of sandstone that few ever witness firsthand. This is federal wilderness in the truest sense, a place where permits are rationed and footprints fade quickly in the wind. The landscape here makes no concessions to human comfort or convenience. The wave stands as the region's most sought-after prize, a swirling formation of Navajo sandstone that seems pulled from a fever dream. Only 20 visitors receive permits each day to walk among its undulating bands of color. The stone flows in ribbons of orange, red, and cream, with frozen mid-motion like a geological snapshot of ancient dunes turned to rock. Iron oxides painted these stripes over 190 million years, layer upon layer compressed into solid wonder. Reaching the wave requires a 3-mile hike across open desert with no marked trail. Visitors navigate by landmarks and luck, following cairns that blend into the surrounding rock. The formation itself sits in a small amphitheater within Coyote Butte's north, protected from casual discovery by distance and difficulty. Those who arrive often stay for hours, watching light shift across surfaces that seem to ripple despite their stillness. Where the Vermilion Cliffs fade into the distance, another protected expanse awaits those willing to seek it. Grand Staircase-Escalante National Monument stretches across nearly 2 million acres of raw, unmanicured terrain. This is land that resisted roads and rejected easy access. Here, the earth reveals itself in layers of time. Each cliff band, a chapter written in stone and silence. Within this vast expanse lies Devil's Garden, a scattered gallery of hoodoos rising from the desert floor. These sandstone pillars stand in defiance of gravity, balanced boulders perched atop narrow pedestals. Wind and rain spent millions of years sculpting these forms, carving softer rock from beneath harder capstones. The result looks like something from a fever dream. Stone mushrooms and twisted spires arranged across the red earth. No paved paths lead through Devil's Garden. Only dirt roads that demand patience and high clearance. Visitors who make the journey find themselves alone among the formations, free to wander between the hoodoos at their own pace. Morning light catches the orange and cream bands in the rock, while afternoon shadows stretch long across the sandy ground. In this forgotten corner of the monument, the silence feels ancient, and the strange shapes seem almost alive. Hidden within the monument's southern reaches, the earth continues its strange artistry in quieter corners. Kodachrome Basin State Park sits tucked away in the southern reaches of Utah, a place so vivid that photographers from the National Geographic Society named it after their legendary film stock. The park spreads across nearly 4,000 acres of high desert, where colors seem more saturated than anywhere else on Earth. "67 sedimentary pipes rise from the valley floor here, geological features found almost nowhere else on the planet. These stone pillars formed when ancient geysers and springs filled with sediment, then hardened over millions of years while softer surrounding rock eroded away. Some stand as tall as a 17-story building, their surfaces weathered into textures that catch morning light in shades of cream, rust, and deep burgundy. Scientists still debate their exact origins, which only adds to the mystery of walking among them. The basin itself rests at an elevation of nearly 6,000 feet, creating a climate where juniper and pinyon pine dot the red earth between formations. Hiking trails wind past balanced rocks and through narrow passages where canyon walls display millions of years of geological history in striped layers. Unlike Utah's crowded national parks, Kodachrome Basin often offers solitude among its sculptures. Here, the silence feels as ancient as the stone itself, and broken only by wind and the occasional call of a canyon wren echoing off sandstone walls. A short drive north, formations even more fantastical emerge from the plateau's edge, where Bryce Canyon National Park holds Utah's most dramatic stone sentinels. This is not a canyon in the traditional sense, but rather a series of natural amphitheaters carved into the edge of a high plateau. The Paiute people who lived here called it the place where red rocks stand like men in a bowl-shaped recess. They were not wrong. Thousands of hoodoos rise from the canyon floor, their forms twisted by 60 million years of frost and rain into shapes that seem borrowed from dreams. Thor's hammer stands as the most recognized of these formations. A massive stone balanced impossibly atop a narrow pedestal. Morning light strikes its surface and turns the rock from pale pink to burning orange within minutes. Photographers wait hours for the precise moment when shadows fall just right across its weathered face. The formation earned its name from Norse mythology, though the forces that shaped it required no gods, only patience measured in millennia. The Bryce Amphitheater offers the most concentrated collection of hoodoos anywhere on Earth. Viewpoints along the rim reveal a maze of spires, fins, and windows stretching toward the distant horizon. At sunrise, the entire basin glows as if lit from within. The iron and manganese in the limestone creating bands of red, orange, and white. Trails descend among the formations, where hikers walk through corridors of stone that tower overhead like the walls of some ancient cathedral built by wind and water alone. Descend from Bryce's high rim and travel west, where one canyon stands apart as Utah's original wonder. Zion National Park rises in the southwestern corner of the state, where the Virgin River has spent millions of years carving through sandstone. Walls of cream and vermilion soar over 2,000 feet above the canyon floor. The Paiute people called this place Mukuntuwap, meaning straight canyon. And early Mormon settlers renamed it Zion, believing they had found a sanctuary worthy of heaven. The Narrows draws visitors into the heart of the canyon itself. Here, the Virgin River becomes the trail, and hikers wade through knee-deep water between walls that tower 1,000 feet overhead. In places, the canyon squeezes to just 20 feet wide, while the cliffs continue their impossible climb toward the sky. Sunlight filters down in shifting beams, painting the wet sandstone in colors that change with each passing hour. The sound of rushing water echoes off ancient stone, creating a cathedral of geology and current. Angel's Landing offers a different kind of communion with this vertical world. The trail climbs 1,800 feet through a series of switchbacks carved into the cliff face. The final half-mile follows a narrow ridge with sheer drops on both sides, chains bolted into the rock providing the only handhold. From the summit, the canyon unfolds in every direction, and the Virgin River appearing as a silver thread far below. Those who make the climb understand why early scouts believed angels might land here. On this throne of stone, suspended between earth and sky. Beyond Zion's crowds and towering walls, Utah keeps quieter secrets waiting to be found. Snow Canyon State Park spreads across a landscape where red and white sandstone meet ancient black lava flows. This contrast creates something unexpected, a place where fire and stone left their marks side by side. The canyon sits just minutes from the town of St. George, yet feels removed from the modern world entirely. Navajo sandstone dunes, frozen in time, rise above the canyon floor. Their petrified waves still visible after millions of years. Lava tubes cut through the rock, remnants of volcanic activity that once poured molten stone across this terrain. The black basalt creates stark borders against the pale and rust-colored cliffs. Hiking trails wind through this geology lesson written in earth and fire. Morning light transforms the canyon walls into glowing amber and cream. Desert tortoises move slowly through the scrub, while roadrunners dart between rocks on the sandy paths. The park remains quieter than its famous neighbors to the north and east. Here, solitude comes easier, and the ancient forces that shaped Utah feel closer to the surface. Turn eastward now, crossing the plateau to where Capitol Reef National Park stretches across nearly 100 miles of wrinkled earth. This park remains one of Utah's least visited, yet its landscapes rival any in the American West. A massive fold in the planet's crust, called the Water Pocket Fold, runs through the park like a spine. Ancient forces pushed layers of rock skyward here, creating a barrier so formidable that early settlers named it a reef. Cathedral Valley occupies the park's remote northern district. Accessible only by rugged dirt roads that cross river fords. Few travelers make this journey, and those who do find themselves alone with monuments of stone. The valley floor spreads flat and sparse beneath towering monoliths that rise without warning from the desert. Silence here feels ancient, broken only by wind moving across sand and sage. The Temple of the Sun and Temple of the Moon stand as the valley's most striking sentinels. These freestanding monoliths climb hundreds of feet from the bentonite clay beneath them. The Temple of the Sun catches morning light on its rust-colored walls, glowing against blue desert sky. Its companion, the Temple of the Moon, rises nearby with a darker, more weathered face that shifts in shadow throughout the day. Together, they create a scene so surreal that visitors often stand in quiet disbelief at what nature built without human hands. Beyond Cathedral Valley's silent sentinels, the Capitol Reef region reveals landscapes lifted from another world entirely. This stretch of south-central Utah holds some of the most otherworldly terrain on the continent. Few roads cross this expanse, and fewer travelers know what waits between the canyons. Here, the earth displays colors and shapes that challenge what we think stone can become. The bentonite hills rise from the desert floor in rounded, almost liquid forms. Ancient volcanic ash settled here some 150 million years ago. Compressing into clay that weathers unlike any other rock. The colors shift from pale gray to deep purple, from subtle green to striking bands of rust. After rain, these hills become impossibly slick, their surfaces gleaming like wet ceramic. In dry seasons, the clay cracks into intricate patterns that stretch across the barren slopes. Almost nothing grows here, leaving the pure geology exposed to open sky. Factory Butte stands alone against the horizon. A massive sandstone formation that dominates the surrounding Badlands. Its flat summit rises over 1,500 feet above the desert plain, visible from many miles in every direction. The slopes below cascade in gray and brown waves, carved by countless seasons of wind and rare flash floods. This isolated landmark draws photographers who wait for specific light, when shadows stretch long across the rippled terrain. The silence here runs deep, broken only by wind moving across stone that has stood watch for ages beyond counting. Follow the dusty roads northward into the San Rafael Desert, where the landscape grows stranger still. Goblin Valley State Park spreads across a basin where erosion has worked with peculiar patience. Thousands of mushroom-shaped rock formations rise from the valley floor, soft sandstone bodies carved by wind and rare desert rains. The effect is less like Earth and more like a colony on some distant world. These formations, called hoodoos or goblins, stand between 3 and 12 feet tall across the valley. Entrada sandstone, deposited here during the Jurassic period, erodes unevenly due to variations in the rock's hardness. Softer layers wear away faster, leaving harder caps balanced on narrower pedestals. The result is an army of stone figures, each one slightly different from its neighbor. Unlike most protected lands, visitors here are encouraged to wander freely among the formations. Children climb over rounded goblins, while adults trace paths through the maze of shapes. The valley floor feels intimate, enclosed by low ridges that block views of the outside world. Standing among these silent stone crowds at sunset, when orange light deepens the red rock to rust, the sense of isolation becomes complete. Step back from the goblins, and a greater wilderness reveals itself across terrain few travelers ever find. The San Rafael Swell rises from the high desert like a geological fortress, its 60-mile dome of uplifted rock hiding some of the most dramatic slot canyons in the American West. This remote region remained largely inaccessible until recent decades, preserving landscapes that feel untouched by modern times. Here, the earth has been sculpted into passages so narrow that midday light barely reaches the canyon floors. The slot canyons of the San Rafael Swell twist through layers of Navajo sandstone laid down nearly 200 million years ago. Flash floods carved these corridors over countless millennia, and polishing walls into flowing curves that seem more liquid than stone. Some passages require sideways movement, the rock pressing close on both shoulders as the sky shrinks to a thin ribbon far above. Colors shift from burnt orange to deep purple in the filtered light, each bend revealing new patterns etched by ancient waters. Little Wild Horse Canyon and Bell Canyon form a loop that draws hikers into this hidden world. The walls rise hundreds of feet overhead, while the path narrows to just a few feet across. Silence fills these corridors, broken only by footsteps echoing against stone that remembers when dinosaurs walked this land. The San Rafael Swell asks nothing of visitors except patience and wonder, offering in return a glimpse of geology stripped bare to its most essential beauty. Southeast of the Swell's hidden slot canyons, one park stands apart in sheer scale and savage beauty. Canyonlands National Park sprawls across more than 300,000 acres of carved earth. The Colorado and Green Rivers have spent 10 million years slicing through rock, creating a maze of canyons, mesas, and buttes. From any overlook, the land drops away in terraces of red and white stone that seem to have no end. The park divides into 4 distinct districts, each separated by the rivers and accessible only by different roads. Island in the Sky rises 2,000 feet above the canyon floors on a broad mesa. The Needles District takes its name from the banded spires that cluster across its southern reaches. The maze remains one of the most remote and challenging landscapes in the American West. Below everything, the rivers continue their ancient work in the district, simply called the rivers. Just beyond the park boundary, Dead Horse Point offers perhaps the most dramatic view in all of Utah. A narrow neck of land extends outward, ending at a promontory 2,000 feet above a gooseneck bend in the Colorado River. Cowboys once corralled wild mustangs on this peninsula, using the natural barriers of cliff edges as fencing. The point earned its name from horses that were left stranded here and perished within sight of the river below. Today, visitors stand where those horses stood, gazing across a panorama that stretches for 100 miles in every direction. The carved depths of Canyonlands give way, just to the northeast, to a park holding more than 2,000 natural stone arches within its borders. Arches National Park rises from the high desert near the town of Moab. Red rock fins stand in parallel rows like the ribs of some ancient creature. Wind and frost have punched holes through these walls over millions of years, creating windows that frame the sky itself. Delicate arch has become the symbol of Utah, its image stamped on license plates across the state. The freestanding curve of salmon-colored sandstone balances on the edge of a slick rock bowl. No buttress supports it. No canyon wall connects to its frame. Hikers climb for 90 minutes across open rock to reach this formation. Arriving at a natural amphitheater where the arch stands alone against distant mountain ranges. At sunset, the stone glows as if lit from within. Double Arch offers a different kind of wonder, 2 massive spans sharing a single foundation. The larger opening stretches more than 140 feet across. Standing beneath these joined arches, visitors look up through stone to open sky. The formation required no trail at all, sitting just steps from the road in the windows section of the park. Morning light floods through both openings, casting shadows that shift across the red earth below. Linking these two neighboring parks, the Red Rock Country continues its strange work of art. The town of Moab sits at the center of this wilderness. A small outpost surrounded by geology that defies easy explanation. Red cliffs rise on every side, their layers recording hundreds of millions of years of planetary history. This is base camp for those who seek the formations that exist beyond the park entrance signs. Corona Arch stands in the desert a few miles from town, waiting at the end of a hiking trail that crosses slick rock and sand. The arch spans 140 feet across, its massive frame curving against the blue sky like a portal carved by patient winds. Unlike the famous spans inside Arches National Park, Corona receives fewer visitors despite its enormous scale. The approach reveals the arch gradually, its form growing larger with each step until hikers stand beneath stone that weighs thousands of tons yet hangs suspended in open air. Northeast of Moab, the earth takes on colors that seem borrowed from another world entirely. The potash evaporation ponds spread across the desert floor in geometric shapes of brilliant blue and turquoise. These pools exist where mining operations extract potash from ancient underground deposits, pumping mineral-rich water into shallow basins where the desert sun does its work. From canyon, overlooks, and aerial views, the ponds create an almost surreal contrast against the surrounding red rock. Vivid proof that this landscape holds surprises, both natural and manufactured. The red cliffs of Moab fade in the rearview mirror as our journey turns northeast, to a corner of the state where time itself lies exposed. Dinosaur National Monument straddles the Utah-Colorado border, a remote wilderness where ancient rivers carved deep canyons through layered rock. Here, the earth reveals secrets far older than the formations we have already witnessed. This is a place where 150 million years collapse into a single wall of stone. The Quarry Exhibit Hall stands as the monument's most famous feature. Inside, a tilted rock face displays over 1,500 dinosaur bones still embedded where they were found. These are not reconstructions or casts, but actual fossils, and preserved in the sandstone that once formed an ancient riverbed. Visitors stand inches from the remains of Allosaurus, Stegosaurus, and long-necked sauropods that roamed this region when Utah lay near the equator. Beyond the quarry, the monument stretches across 210,000 acres of wilderness. The Green and Yampa rivers wind through canyons 1,000 feet deep, their waters carving paths through rock that predates the dinosaurs themselves. Petroglyphs left by the Fremont people mark canyon walls, evidence of human presence spanning thousands of years. In this forgotten corner of Utah, the story of life on Earth unfolds in layers of stone and silence. Leave the dinosaurs in their stone graves and turn west, toward the mountains that define Utah's northern edge. The Wasatch Range rises abruptly from the valley floor, a wall of granite and snow that stretches for nearly 200 miles. These peaks catch Pacific storms and hold their moisture as winter snowpack. The range separates the Great Basin from the Colorado Plateau, two geological worlds divided by a single spine of stone. Mount Timpanogos stands as the crown of the central Wasatch, its summit reaching just under 12,000 feet. The mountain earned its name from the Timpanogos band of the Ute people, who lived in its shadow for generations. Glaciers carved deep cirques into its flanks, or leaving behind alpine lakes that reflect the sky like scattered mirrors. A massive glacier still clings to the northeast face, one of the few remaining in the state. The peak dominates the view from Utah Valley below, visible from dozens of miles in every direction. Wildflower meadows blanket its slopes during summer months, painting the mountainside in brief splashes of color. Rocky trails wind upward through aspen groves and across exposed ridgelines. At the summit, the view extends from desert basins to distant ranges. A reminder that Utah holds more than red stone and sand. Beneath Timpanogos and its neighboring summits, a river has carved its own passage through the range. Provo Canyon cuts through the Wasatch Range east of Utah Lake, carving a passage between towering limestone walls. The Provo River runs cold and clear along the canyon floor, fed by mountain snowmelt from peaks that rise above 10,000 feet. This corridor has served as a natural highway for centuries, connecting valley settlements to the high country beyond. Bridal Veil Falls announces itself before the road even reaches it. Twin streams of water plunge 607 feet down a sheer cliff face, their mist catching sunlight and scattering rainbows across the canyon. The falls take their name from the delicate veil-like appearance of the cascading water as it spreads across the rock. During spring runoff, the volume increases dramatically, and the sound of falling water echoes off the canyon walls for miles. A short trail leads to the base of the falls, where visitors stand in the cool spray rising from the rocks below. The surrounding cliffs host mountain goats that pick their way across ledges no wider than a hand. In winter, the falls partially freeze into massive columns of blue-white ice, drawing climbers who scale the frozen curtains with axes and crampons. Through every season, Bridal Veil Falls remains one of the most accessible yet striking natural features in the entire Wasatch region. The canyon walls release their grip, and where Provo Canyon opens into the valley below, another kind of wonder spreads across the basin floor. Tucked between mountain ranges in the northern valleys, the city of Provo offers a different kind of landscape altogether. Here, the Wasatch Front drops sharply toward a vast freshwater basin that has drawn settlers and travelers for generations. This is where alpine terrain meets open water in unexpected harmony. Utah Lake spreads across nearly 150 square miles, making it the largest natural freshwater lake in the state. Its shallow waters rarely exceed 15 feet in depth, warming quickly under summer sun. The Wasatch Mountains rise directly to the east, their snow-capped peaks reflected on calm days across the lake's broad surface. This juxtaposition of water and mountain creates vistas that feel borrowed from somewhere far beyond the American West. The shoreline stretches for miles in gentle curves and marshy inlets. Pelicans drift in loose formations near the reeds, while distant sailboats catch afternoon breezes. Early morning light turns the water silver before the peaks above shift from shadow to gold. Fishermen stand motionless along the banks, their silhouettes part of a scene that has changed little across centuries. The lake remains a quiet presence beside the growing city, a reminder that Utah holds more than stone and sand within its borders. Follow the Wasatch Front northward, past smaller towns and spreading suburbs to where Utah's capital city rises. Salt Lake City sits in this valley, a metropolis framed by peaks that rise more than 7,000 feet above its streets. Founded in 1847 by Mormon pioneers, the city has grown into Utah's capital and cultural center. Snow-capped ridges form a dramatic backdrop to neighborhoods that stretch toward the shores of the Great Salt Lake. Temple Square stands at the spiritual heart of downtown. A 35-acre complex that draws millions of visitors each year. The Salt Lake Temple took 40 years to build, its granite walls rising in 6 spires above manicured gardens. Surrounding structures include the domed tabernacle, home to the famous organ with its 11,000 pipes. Quiet pathways wind between reflecting pools and flower beds that bloom in careful arrangements through the warmer months. North of Temple Square, the Utah State Capitol commands a hill overlooking the entire valley. Completed in 1916, its copper dome has weathered to a pale green patina against the mountain's skyline. Corinthian columns line the entrance, leading into marble halls where murals depict scenes from the state's history. From the grounds, the view stretches past the city grid to the distant shimmer of the inland sea that gives Salt Lake its name. Climb the mountain pass east of the capital, and another community reveals itself among the Wasatch slopes. Park City rises from a valley in the Wasatch Range, a place where mining history and mountain culture have shaped something distinct. Silver brought settlers here in the 1860s, and the wealth they pulled from these slopes built a town that refused to disappear when the veins ran dry. Today, snow brings the crowds, but the character remains rooted in that original frontier grit. Historic Main Street climbs the hillside in a stretch of preserved buildings that once housed saloons and assay offices. The facades still carry their Victorian bones, though galleries and restaurants now fill the spaces behind them. In winter, this street fills with visitors from the nearby ski resorts, their boots tracking snow across wooden boardwalks. Summer brings a different quiet. When wildflowers bloom on the surrounding slopes and hiking trails empty into silence. The mountains surrounding Park City hold more than ski runs and hiking paths. These peaks catch storms rolling in from the Great Salt Lake, dropping snow measured in hundreds of inches each year. Above the tree line, alpine bowls collect powder that draws skiers from around the world. Below, aspen groves turn gold each autumn, their leaves trembling in mountain breezes that carry the first hints of coming cold. This is high country living, where elevation shapes both landscape and daily rhythm. And so our journey ends, though Utah stays with those who cross its terrain. Not as a memory of places visited, but as a shift in how stone and sky can exist together. The scale of this land changes something in the traveler, leaves a different sense of what the earth can become when given enough time and pressure and wind. From the hoodoos of Bryce Canyon to the frozen waves of the Wave, from Delicate Arch standing alone against the horizon to the silent corridors of San Rafael's slot canyons, these formations required no human hand to reach such strange perfection. Click on the video that's appearing now to continue your journey of the wonders of the world.